inflation has shriveled household budgets, and the government has taken over food production and distribution. The hardship is killing and deforming children. This was written by Mary O'Grady, editor and columnist of the Wall Street Journal, on the economic state of Venezuela. Did hearing this make you think of America? While the statement describes the state of Venezuela, are you now more concerned about the state of our country? According to Doctors of Medicine Lilanthy Bolasuria, Seth A. Berkowitz, and Hillary K. Seligman, food insecurity rates in American children increased to 18 million children in the year 2020. After hearing this, alongside the conditions of the children in Venezuela, does this motivate you to help and make situations better for your fellow Americans? While not all of us have the same financial condition, I think we can collectively agree that inflation has caused more bad than good. I am also sure that several of us have been concerned about inflation and the astronomical levels it has been reaching as of late. Additionally, I am certain that several of you are receiving or know someone who is currently receiving food stamps. We have all researched the issues that inflation has brought to people receiving SNAP benefits. In fact, all of the people in our group have received SNAP benefits in some way, shape, or form in the past. I personally received a PEBT card during the pandemic, but I didn't know what it was. The PEBT is the Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer. It was provided to families who had children who could no longer receive meals via school. Upon conducting research and learning more about it, I found out that it was beneficial for people to receive this during the pandemic, especially with so many job losses at the time. As Americans, we should speak out about harmful increases in food prices and to help those in our community. Today, we will be discussing how wages and food stamps cannot keep up with increasing food prices and possible solutions to this issue. Then, we will discuss why food stamp money should be increased. Lastly, we will cover specific steps you can take to help make a difference.
Groceries are at an all-time high, and wages are unable to keep up. Should families turn to food stamps? What if they don't meet the requirements for food stamps? Is it not a problem that families can't afford to put food on the table? In an article by the Wall Street Journal by Hannon Paul, in the U.S. from June 2022 to June 2023, food prices rose a total of 4.6%. In another article by the New York Times, they quoted the Census Bureau, who stated in 2022, poverty rose from 7.8% to 12.4%. With inflation and poverty both rising, many families struggle to put food on the table. And this leads to many having to turn to food stamps and food pantries. Even so, this is not sustainable because these families are unable to make ends meet. In a magazine called Mother Jones, they spoke with a single mother of 3 children. Her income was $55,000, but unfortunately, she didn't qualify for food stamps, and she was forced to turn to drastic measures to feed her children. Towards the end of most months, in order to put food on their plates, she made sure that they were fed, and from the scraps of their plates, she made her own dinner. This is one of many families who are forced to go through this. Another family, my own, had food stamps until I was 18. We were allocated around $250 each month for 3 people. Towards the end of some months, we would only have rice and beans left, and this meant eating the same thing for a week straight. As food became more expensive, we were unable to afford even this. If we received more SNAP benefits from the government, and if food hadn't become so expensive, we would have been able to put more food on the table, and we wouldn't have struggled so much. These are few of many reasons, and I hope this gave you a glimpse into why we need to do something about this. Luckily, there are many ways to help these families and possibly even solve the issue.
With the increasing prices of food, rising rates of poverty, incomes being at a standstill, while inflation continues to skyrocket, we are left to wonder, what can we do? The short answer is a lot, actually. But first we need to figure out what changes we want and how we are going to enact it. Looking at the problems that lead Americans toward food insecurity, it's easy to get overwhelmed, but we can narrow the list down. We can take a step back and look at the issue. We see that there are 2 main problems The first one is high food costs, and the second one is people simply do not possess an income large enough to accommodate for the high cost of food. Looking at these two problems, the solution is to very simply increase the amount of SNAP or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program funds that beneficiaries receive. According to a report published by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, SNAP forms a critical foundation for low-income households, health and well-being, lifting millions out of poverty and improving food security. The report goes on to explain the challenges that beneficiaries face as the cost of food continue to rise. But SNAP's relatively modest benefits, which are based on an outdated model and averaged less than $1.40 per person per meal in 2019. The report ends by explaining the importance of increasing the benefits that program members receive, enabling them to spend more on groceries than their limited budgets would otherwise allow, and making it easier to put enough food on the table.
Social media.
So we've already identified the problem and the solution. The next question is, how do we make change happen? Do we riot? Do we boycott eating outrageously priced foods? Or do we revolt against our government? The best answer is much less dramatic. The best way that we can spur our country towards positive change is by writing a letter. In a publication in Automotive News, Dick Garber Jr., the owner of Garber Buick, a franchise of General Motors, explains how the company's file for bankruptcy in 2009 would mean that the Buick dealership was to be shut down, resulting in the loss of more than 80 jobs. Garber explains, led by the area's economic development group and Chamber of Commerce, they began a letter-writing campaign as a Hail Mary effort to save the dealership. He then goes on to say, and GM listened. Within weeks of the letters being delivered by Garber to then GM CEO Fitz Henderson, Garber Buick was one of dozens of stores to be saved. So, as shown in the instance of Garber Buick, just writing a letter to those in power can have a huge impact on problems. And this is true in the case of increasing SNAP benefits. The solution is very clear: for people to write to their representatives in the Senate and to advocate for an increase in SNAP member benefits. The increasing of SNAP funding will have an incredible impact for the country, but also a failure to do so will have detrimental effects.
Social media is an effective platform for spreading awareness of the food insecurities that many of our communities are going through. It is also helpful for identifying food deserts or rural regions in urban cities where it is difficult to find fresh quality and good foods. Social platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are very good at informing and analyzing food insecurities in populations across the U.S. According to an article by JMIR Publications, social media makes examinations possible relating to dietary habits that individuals in a population with food insecurities are going through, and use these statistics to compare with individuals who live in areas where there's not much food insecurity. Social media can help discover the types of food that a population eats. For instance, individuals living in areas of food insecurity or food desert usually have their social media content with mentioning posts of unhealthy foods with high caloric content and low nutritional value. By studying these relationships between obesity rates and the positive expressions of unhealthy foods in Twitter or Facebook posts, public health research facilities can reach out to provide resources to these communities by providing social networks, starting food markets with fresh products, and etc. Speaking up about these matters is another important thing to do. No matter how much you think it may make a difference, social media is an important way to spread awareness. In an article by the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Journal, Justin Nixon, a registered nurse became a whistleblower after he witnessed unethical medical procedures performed on patients by specialists that were not licensed and did not go through accredited programs. He was shocked and disgusted by how about the danger and the bodily harm against these patients, and went on to broadcast outlets where he discussed these things with ABC, 60 Minutes, and 7:30 Report. When asked as to why he did these things, why he spoke up when other of his colleagues did not, Nixon said that he was overridden with guilt by being a bystander while these people were being harmed, and their harm was a profit for these big hospitals. Like Justin Nixon, we all have a responsibility to raise awareness of food insecurities that our fellow Americans are going through, especially during this economy. You can help by participating in campaigns, volunteering, and raising fundraisers. And if that isn't possible, don't worry. You have your phones, you have your laptops. Go to your social media platforms. Do a little research about food insecurities. For example, at Yolo County, which is west of Sacramento, and Los Angeles, where there are a lot of communities that are going through food insecurities, and talk about these things, spread awareness.
There are many benefits if food stamp allocation money is increased, and even more consequences if food stamp money is not increased. A large portion of the population relies on food stamps that provide them money for food, especially for people who are needing work, need help with providing for their family, need money, or need help providing to the economy's well-being. According to Mike Dorning for the Chicago Tribune in 2009, most food stamps go to a group of people called the working poor. So these people already have jobs, but their jobs do not provide them enough money to feed themselves and their families. With more access to food, society would flourish and people would become more productive. People would have better mental states and have more optimism and more faith in the country. They would then be more inclined to work, to live, and to repay the country that has helped them so much. With society flourishing in turn when the workers' physical, mental, and emotional well-being needs are improved, everyone can benefit from food stamps, not just the people who are on food stamps themselves. Now, if food stamp money is not increased to account for the inflation of household food and daily food essentials, more and more people will struggle to obtain the food that they need to survive. According to Talia Soglin, who wrote an article in April of 2022, more and more people are relying on the food pantry and on public generosity because food stamps do not increase to account for the inflation that has happened with food. Soglin's article states that between 2021 and 2022, food prices raised 8.6%, whereas the people who are receiving food stamps are receiving as low as $16 a month for themselves and their families. $16 a month is not nearly enough, and it shows that people are very much struggling. People who were previously able to live comfortably using food stamps are finding that the food stamps that once supported them are no longer enough to support them and their families, and so they must turn to food pantries, which are not sustainable in the long term. Even people who once flourished under America's economy are finding that they cannot be financially supported to the extent that would provide them food. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as shown on this graph, 1.6 million more people have become unemployed since last year. This includes people in Silicon Valley's tech industry, people like you and me, people like our friends and family. And since food insecurity, poverty, or even just getting laid off from your job could happen to me or you at any given time, it would be in your best interest to prevent yourself from starving in the future by doing your part to increase the amount of money allocated by food stamps.
In summary, low-income families are suffering at the hands of inflation, especially when SNAP benefits are not increasing. We can do our part to help our fellow Americans by starting a letter-writing campaign or even using social media to speak out. As previously stated, both of these methods are effective and they've proven successful in the past. I'm sure many of you have seen your friends, family members, and even your favorite public figures create posts on social media fighting for what they believe in. We can also make a change. You can contact Governor Gavin Newsom by leaving a request at www.gov.ca.gov/contact/. Here you can also find a mailing address and a phone number that you can call. If we all come together as a community, we can not only fight for our fellow Americans across the country, but also for people that we know in our day-to-day lives. Think about it. Just a few minutes of your time can help bring food to countless people and their families. Will you help make a difference?